All right, guys. Well, thanks for inviting me to your amazing office.
Thank you.
Thank
Thanks for coming.
So what do you guys make?
So we are AptDeco. AptDeco is a marketplace for buying and selling furniture based here in New York City. We take care of essentially like the whole process from pickup and delivery to payments and everything in between.
Yeah.
So basically, we kind of took Craigslist and just, said if you get a trusted community of users, if you can make the pickup and delivery easy between two people and the payments between two people, you'd have something useful. And so that's essentially been the premise since we launched.
And what made you convinced that this could be a fully fledged product? Because I've seen all kinds of blog posts about the fragmentation of Craigslist, right? Mm-hmm. And some have succeeded as products and others haven't. What gave you the impression that this could be a thing?
Well, I mean, we started it out of our own frustration.
Yeah.
Just having a really bad experience trying to sell on furniture on Craigslist. But realizing it's a big opportunity we did a lot of market research to sort of test if this is something that people would be interested in, sort of the premise of the solution. So, for example, we would go on Craigslist initially and test, hey, with delivery, like we'll actually just copy somebody's listing and just add delivery and see how people react to it. Okay. And we saw that there's definitely a big opportunity there because people seem to be a lot more responsible when you just add the delivery word to the listing.
How could you know that if you hadn't created the original listing? So you would dupe it twice?
Yeah.
You would do one with and one without.
Exactly.
Okay.
Yes. Yeah.
The other thing when we did our research, we saw it was the fifth most popular category on Craigslist.
Okay.
Furniture
was the fifth most popular category. And then when we created an MVP and when we actually had launched the site the first day that we had the Frankenstein of a site back in 2014, we had a transaction the day that we launched it, and this is with no earthly idea of really what we were doing. So, I just think all those signs kind of pointed to it. And then when we applied to YC and ultimately got into YC, I think that's when we were like, shit, this is this is real,
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Were you pursuing other potential ideas? Because the market research thing is much more of the business school approach.
Yes.
And it's a less common approach within YC startups, right? So were there other ideas that you were considering?
There wasn't any other ideas. And, Reham and I had wanted to work together for a long period of time.
Yeah.
And, quite frankly, it wasn't really that scientific. And we weren't, I don't think we're the traditional founders in the sense that, we weren't serial entrepreneurs. We, come from very traditional business background. But we were we took a lot of inspiration from Airbnb and other companies. We're like, this seems very obvious.
Yeah.
And that we kind of just took it and ran with it.
Yeah, I mean, I think for us, our experience, we were so frustrated with what happened to us when we were trying to sell our furniture on Craigslist. And then we started kind of really, frankly, obsessing over, this just is really, really bad. That frankly, I don't think either one of us was ready at the time to start a business, but we stumbled upon this idea.
Mm-hmm.
And
when you were ending business school,
when
right?
I was ending business school and Kalam, it was sort of happened all at the same time. I was finishing business school, coming back to the city to start a job at a startup, not start my own company. And so I was trying to sell my furniture, and I just had a really, really bad experience. And Kalam at the same time was also trying to sell a sofa, and he also had a bad experience. And so we were just talking about it and just why is this so bad? Airbnb had just taken off. Uber had just taken off. And, everybody's now doing this sort of quote unquote sharing economy. So why couldn't you do that with furniture? And we just kept on talking about it all the time to the extent we're hey, let's just do this.
Yeah.
Now is the time. We don't need more experience. So, and that's really kind of how we happen, I would say. Yeah.
How did you psychologically prepare yourself to go off that ledge and not have the steady, Goldman paycheck? Because you also from business school, do you have loans and things you need to cover?
I still do. Yes, I'm still paying those loans. Yeah. Yes. I mean, I don't think anything prepared us for what we got ourselves into.
Nothing will prepare you. Yes. I think that we were just kind of at the point where I think when we had kind of gotten to the interview point of YC, and like quite frankly, I was still kind of moonlighting, so I was still doing doing this in the evening, and then doing working at L'Oreal, and that that's the only job I had ever had. I never worked professionally anywhere else, so so it was. I was quite frankly, very happy at L'Oreal. It wasn't like I was. I'd always had like upper mobility, and I loved working there. I loved what I was doing. I was very happy in that corporate environment, and, had a lot of experience and upward trajectory. But, I think that, we just saw this as an opportunity. And then we said, at the end of the day, like if we failed, it's not like we couldn't go back to, corporate America or go somewhere else. And we always were kind of confident in our skills. But
this is super interesting to me because I 100% agree with you. And I think that's true for most people at these super competitive jobs. They're talented enough to get the job. They could get it again. Yeah. But how do you flip that switch to get over the fear?
I think when we got into Y Combinator, that's where we were just like, okay. Yeah. When we got to the interview point, then we were just like, okay, if we're getting a YC, we got to do it. I mean, like,
but you had already quit before. Like, he had already given his note. Kalam had already given his notice before we even got to. We had received the interview request, but we hadn't been to YC yet for the interview.
So you didn't know you were in.
So we didn't know we were in. Yeah. But I decided not to take the job that I came to New York for, and ended up just doing this full time. Yeah. And Kalam was moonlighting and essentially help financing it. So while he was working at L'Oreal and then doing this at night and in the weekends. Yeah. But I think like we just saw a problem that we became very intimate with, and also the solution for the problem, we experienced it during the same time. So, when we had this really bad experience trying to sell our furniture on Craigslist, I moved back to New York and I had my truck, and Kalam borrowed my truck for that one day, listed back his listing on Craigslist saying 1 day only, free delivery in New York City. And that same day, someone gave him the full amount and showed up immediately, did not cancel, did not flake, was not sketchy. And so we're like, wow, like this is how you do it. You have to offer delivery. You have to take care of everything. You have to make it simple. And so we saw the solution, and that like really helped us sort of, it fast forwarded our like process of deciding whether we should do this or not, because we had the problem and the solution at the same time, and we're like, okay, we got to do it.
Right. So you have that kind of like positive feedback from a market.
Exactly. Yeah.
And I guess we just felt it was a good kind of common sense solution as well.
Yeah.
I think it's found as like we're probably more practical than most.
Yeah.
And we're probably kind of one foot in front of the other type of founders.
Yeah.
Versus I don't know, like kind of in the clouds type. We're very
like moonshot type projects.
I think we're very practical in the sense, and I think that we saw this as seeing it with our own eyes and seeing the opportunity. We thought of it as a very practical kind of solution to something that, everybody has furniture. It's a kind of big problem. So I think a lot of those kind of things were, kind of fit, I think, within our, if I have to think back about it now, fit within our wheelhouse. Like, this is something very tangible and something that could be really useful.
When you could kind of model it out. And just like, oh, this works. Yeah. This works.
Absolutely.
And how did you communicate that to your friends and family from these like prestigious jobs and schools and stuff?
We're still figuring that out.
Yeah. You know what's funny? Like, for the first time I actually sat down with my father, and, we've been kind of in these conversations with investors recently. So I showed him like our investor deck, and I'm just trying to take him through the investor deck. And I'm like, and it's such a strange thing to talk about, raising a few $1 million or doing this and that. It just, a lot of times, quite frankly, I think it's just like, you're talking, I mean, it's very hard to make it very tangible, for, we're saying we're practical. They're uber practical, so, but I think that they understood it. I think when we first did this back in 2014, I think there's a lot of, I wouldn't say just skepticism. I think it was just like worried, just worried, like don't give up like that good job, and don't a bird in the hand. A bird in the hand is definitely, I think, the philosophy that my parents have. I think probably most people, probably that generation. And I would guess, and Reham can speak on it, you speak on that as that, if you're have an immigrant story, it's like, you find a good job at a good company and you stay there. And so I think it was just so foreign.
Yeah.
They were skeptical and worried, but at the same time, kind of supportive.
Yeah. My parents, so I'm from Sudan. I came to the U.S. for college. And so my parents still live in Sudan. And so for them, the golden ticket is to have a job at Goldman, not start a company and, just work crazy hours. And the whole thing has just kind of been crazy for them. So they're like finally, I think, wrapping their heads around it. But I mean, pretty much almost every phone call I have with my parents is like, so when is this going to be over? It's just, but also they don't live here. So they don't see the impact we're making, it's a completely different world, right, for them. So they just don't really understand it. But they're supportive, which is the important part, So,
but there's not a kind of an entrepreneurship narrative in Sudan?
Oh, it's huge. My dad has his own business.
Right.
My entire family,
weird.
all my family members have their own businesses because the way the economy is structured there is there's no large corporations. I guess there's a couple, but most people are just small business owners. My dad has his own engineering firm. My aunts and uncles, most of them have, either like their own medical practice or engineering firms or architecture firms or what have you. So that's the norm. But I guess because probably they're business owners, that they know is how hard it is to run a business. Like if you have a job that pays well and you don't have to worry about, covering everybody else's salary, why are you doing this to yourself? Right. So that's probably where it comes from.
I actually think, in my parents are probably, even working at L'Oreal was like a kind of a leap for them. They're more like a good, stable government type of job, quite frankly.
Where are you from?
I'm from California. I'm from the Bay Area. And so I think that, they're like uber focused on stability, and so where, that's, I was never interested in those, particular type of things. And I was always interested in business and wanted to work in a company that was exciting and innovative. And even for them, I think that kind of seemed like fluff. And so this was like even another level of like really
such a
off the
weird
leaf.
generational thing, because you would assume that even like being from California, at least they'd like, you go work at HP or something.
Yeah.
But like that's not.
Yeah,
Didn't your dad work in the government or?
He did. Yeah, he did. And so. And my mom worked for like the railroad, Southern Pacific. So I think,
super stable.
Yeah.
Very, exactly. Super stable.
Yeah.
And so even a company like L'Oreal or Goldman Sachs, that Goldman Sachs still has a process where they go, I think, their bottom 10% every year or something like that. Mm-hmm. Right. So, and L'Oreal is an extremely lean, company or corporation. So it's not a company where you can like hide around and skate by.
You can't coast.
You can't coast, and so, which that's never been the type of thing that I was interested in anyway.
Okay. And did you go to business school as well?
I didn't.
You did not.
I went to undergrad at Clark Atlanta, which is a historically black college in Atlanta, Georgia, and got recruited for L'Oreal right out of undergrad, and I was there for like 13 years.
No kidding.
Yeah.
Okay. And now, how do you get in? Were you getting into startups in business school? Like, how did this happen amongst your friends? Because I know that's been a pretty big shift from 15 years ago, if you went to HBS, it was like private equity or like consulting, right? But now it seems like more people are going to like the Googles and the Facebook type companies, right? So when you were in school, was that coming up or?
Yes.
What? Yeah.
Yes, it was definitely coming up. Sort of, there was definitely a shift where I went to Wharton and there were more, my class, there were more people talking about tech versus going into banking and finance. So like the market had crashed a few years before and, a lot of people are just sort of exhausted from the financial industry and they were looking for something else. It was actually interesting. When I started business school, I knew I was always going to do something. Actually, one of my essays was about building a social enterprise, but I didn't know what kind of social enterprise. I always thought it would be connected to Sudan or connected to Africa in a way. But I always knew that I was going to start something at some point, but I didn't think straight out of business school. I'm ready. I needed more experience, and that's why I wanted to join a startup. So when I was at business school, I saw this shift where a lot of people were asking me questions, people who came from finance about tech, because I'm an engineer, and everybody wanted to like, okay, well, tell me more about tech, and like, how do you be a product manager? How do you do this? I'm like, wait a minute. All these people are asking me about tech, and I'm trying to get out of, tech. Something is wrong there. Yeah. And so, I really started digging deeper, but I did definitely do a lot of startup sort of business plan competitions when I was in business school.
Okay.
Talked to a lot of people who started their own businesses and just sort of realized, well, all these people are, I feel like I'm as smart as them. They can do it. I should be able to do it. And that really helped me. And I think get further.
And I think I was, I think I was very fortunate for Reham and I to kind of work on AptDeco kind of at that time because she was being immersed to kind of the startup world where I think I was quite frankly like very removed from it. When I think about kind of where we are now, when I think about pre-YC versus post-YC, and just the tech environment, particularly in the Bay Area. For sure. We're like, man, I was light years away from that particular world. And if it wasn't for Y Combinator kind of giving us like a significant immersion into kind of the startup world, I don't think that, I don't think we would have had the progress that we've had. Like definitely not, because there's so many things that, I think when we started this, we said, listen, we have a lot of business experience. Yeah. We work at great companies. We've worked at great companies. We can just apply that knowledge and start this company. And this is the furthest thing from the truth. I mean, just what it takes to get from 0 to 10, is a totally different, 0 to 100 is a totally different skill set than what we had acquired during our professional years.
What were the outstanding learnings from a classical business education? Because I think there's like this common trope that like business school is a waste of time, and even like business education in a lot of the startup culture, right? And so people fall back on, whether it's like PG's essays or kind of like lean startup things. But I'd be willing to bet that there were super valuable courses that you guys took. And so if you were talking to other startup founders, what would you pressure them to learn?
One of the things that I always think and I always joke with the team about is financial modeling and just being able, I've become pretty crazy with, it's not even financial model, but just modeling. How do you model? How do you build projections? How do you think about business scenarios? And, sort of as you think about your next big project, like how do you map that out? That was purely from business school. I think that's like probably the biggest thing that I still use every day here.
Yeah. I think for me, just analytical structure. So when you're how to structure looking at numbers in a way that makes sense. That's all I did at L'Oreal. I did in my whole entire professional career. And so, at first, it was not as applicable. Like so, when you first have getting a startup off the ground, you just gotta like just do shit and throw it and see what sticks, and then do more of it, and then listen, you can analyze it like later down the line. Yeah. But like at first, it's just like you just got to do a whole bunch of stuff, not in a scalable, manageable way.
Well, you were doing the deliveries on your own too.
Yeah,
right?
yeah. We were doing deliveries. We were going to people's homes, buying furniture. Like we're just doing all kind of crazy stuff. And at the instruction of the YC partners, and then you figure out how to take those kind of crazy zany ideas and to make them into kind of scalable practical models of things that are repeatable in a scalable way. So, but after that, after you do that, you have to know how to view your analytics, set up, a strong foundation to really be able to look and say, did this work? Did that not work? How do I continue to repeat this? The other things too is I think is that people don't talk about enough is just the establishing a business culture, team management, people management.
It's huge, yeah.
And that's a huge pitfall for startups is that they don't know how to manage people. They have a lot, they implode because because they don't know how to deal with conflict.
Shitty culture.
They don't they don't know how to talk to one another. They don't know how to, manage dynamics if there's conflict amongst one another. Yeah. And so I think that's probably one of the biggest things that people don't talk about enough is just conflict management and people management is something that I think that we've been able to deal with. Hiring, firing, all those things are things that we've had experience with that are very tangible and very relatable to startup.
And even creating structure, I would say. Yeah. So, early on, sure, you're a tiny team, maybe you're like 3 or 4 people, and people sort of dismiss the idea of, we don't really need structure. We can just talk to each other all the time. But having regular checkpoints, like weekly meetings and, those type of things actually make a big difference, or even, team meetings where everyone comes together and talk about sort of whatever's happening next week or what have you. People dismiss that. And these are the things that come from business school or come from sort of our traditional work experience. That these are things that we've done every day when we were there, right? And so we've been able to instill that from an early on in sort of our business. And I think it really helped sort of calm things down to some extent, because it's crazy being in a startup anyway. So if you can create a bit of sense of stability, it goes a long way for the rest of the team.
Yeah. How would you structure that? Say a founder approached you and this is how you should structure your check-ins or whatever it might be. What's a framework you use?
We meet with our direct reports once a week. And more if need be, but once a week to talk through just what are kind of the strategic projects that they're working on. We just have our project list sheet that's public for everyone to see. So we have a project list sheet in Google Sheets, simple, stupid. And we have all of our strategic projects that people are working on. We touch on those projects and we have kind of tentative due dates. Sometimes you'll finish ahead. Sometimes it'll take longer. It's more than you expected. And we have those. We also have daily stand-up meetings where we just have a quick kind of touch base in regards to what we're working on to keep the team kind of engaged and collaborative. And then we have a one time a week team KPI meeting where we review the overarching numbers for the company. Okay. So that could be unit sales, dollar sales, refunds, returns, positive and negative Yelp reviews, all those things. So we have about once a week.
And when it comes to conflict, actually just dealing with conflict, not conflict avoidance, how do you do? Is that through the one-on-ones?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Okay. That's through the one-on-ones. And
we've also done, we do performance reviews, even at our stage. So we've been doing them for the last 3. We've been around for almost 5 years, but we've been doing them for probably 3. This is our 3rd or 4th time. It's very simple. We didn't use a software or anything. We just created some questions on type form.
Which are what?
How do you rate this person's ability to deal with difficult situations, or their problem-solving skills, or team management skills, or responsiveness, things like that. I think there were 10 or 15 questions.
Is it quantitative?
So it's a scale 1 to 5.
Okay,
and it's 360. So
everybody reviews everyone.
Everyone reviews everyone.
50 people review 50.
No. Oh, okay. So this is our the HQ team. So 10 people.
10 review. Okay.
Yeah, exactly. Okay. And it doesn't take long.
Yeah.
And then we review it. And then even Kalam and I, ours are public. So the whole team gets to see, because we have to hold ourselves accountable as well. So we find, transparency is very important. So we share with them
now,
the raw
are the
feedback.
Reviews anonymous?
Yes.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. Very important.
Yeah, that's tricky.
Yeah. Yes.
Yeah, that's tricky.
And so we compile the feedback. Of course, when you're writing written feedback, there's sometimes you can tell who's who. But as the managers, we compile the feedback and try to anonymize it as much as possible. But the form itself is definitely anonymous as well.
Mm-hmm.
But I think the one thing that that just to kind of harp on that again, I think it's important to stress is just. We're not afraid to, in a very, and obviously, in a way that's developmental, is not afraid to tell people when they're not meeting a particular expectation or they're falling below, but to be able to do it in a way that's very constructive. And I know that's from working in corporate America, where you have to be politically correct and you have to know how to kind of structure feedback in a way that, that works for a company of that scale. And I see a lot of founders struggle with that. I see a lot of them struggle with that, and they'll just let something fester on and on. Because they don't know, because they haven't had kind of a professional training in conflict management.
Oh, for sure. Yeah. I mean, have you guys had to let people go at this point?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. So what do you think founders get wrong in that department?
And I think we've fallen victim to this. They wait too long.
Yeah.
They are not transparent in terms of like, maybe they'll fire them without really giving them the opportunity to course correct.
Yeah.
So they'll as a manager, they'll bottle in, like, I'm so tired of this person doing X, Y, Z, and they'll just hold it in for 6 months, and then they'll just be like, fuck it, you're fired, and they'll explode. And this person will be like, hey, I didn't even know I was doing something wrong.
Yeah.
So I think those are kind of things that, I think those are some things that people definitely kind of the missteps. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I think those are like definitely the two. And we always, if it's performance related, because sometimes you're firing because, quote unquote, you're downsizing, or like maybe the role no longer is needed.
Yeah.
And that's very different.
Yeah.
And even like if you're changing direction, engaging that person earlier on in the conversation.
Yeah.
So they understand like, hey, and we've actually had to do that. Hey, like this is where the company's headed. It looks like we don't need this role anymore. Why don't we put plan together to see if there's something else you can do? If there isn't, then, start looking for something else. And we're giving them that opportunity, and being that transparent actually was really, really, it's a very hard conversation to have.
Sure.
But it's an important conversation because these are, like people that we really care about, and we want them to also be successful. But in terms of firing in terms of performance, we always talk about also, by the time you're fired, you should know that you're kind of getting fired because it's coming because we've had plenty of conversations about performance, about expectations, about you not meeting expectations. If it's a shock, that means as a manager you're doing something wrong. If they're surprised, that means you're doing something wrong.
Mm-hmm. And when it came to modeling out your product in the early days, in the beginning, did you ever have negative margins?
Yes.
Yeah.
Doing it yourself. I mean, we also did not really. We've had to learn what our margin, like how do you actually compute your margins and what goes in all the different, the nuance of the transaction. It took us time to learn that.
Okay,
so, I mean, even like our fees were just so low. We were charging, I think it was like 10 to 15% transaction fee versus now it's like 19 to 29%.
Yeah.
And that's because we were not really thinking about margin at all at the time, which is, I think, like a lot of the issues.
Or we just,
or it's not like
we thought we knew the cost, but then once you get into it, you realize there's another cost here or cost there, and so the model is just kind of the foundation and structure, but for sure it's going to change once you really get into it. That's why I think YC is so good, just about like, man, you just gotta just do it because there's so many things that. I mean, I don't care how many amazing models you have or how much experience you have. When you do it for the first time, there's going to be some things that you're going to uncover that you weren't expecting.
Totally.
And you got to be able to, modify and change for that.
I think also like early on, you can't be optimizing just yet for margins.
Yeah.
But, doesn't mean that you offer your product for free because you still don't know what goes into it. Like what are the different variables? But once you've established that, hey, like this is actually a product that works and people want it and they come back, then you need to like dig into the data and figure out exactly what it takes to make a transaction, how much it costs to get a customer, all those things, and then adjust your fees and prices accordingly.
Yeah. Because I was wondering, you had mentioned in another podcast about partnering up with another delivery provider early on, right? So I assume you guys are doing it in the very beginning, right? Because you're like, we're going to test if this is a product that anyone gives a shit about. And then you're like, okay, getting this, like going in the direction of product market fit. But how do you even figure out that pricing? Like, did you just guess that people weren't going to be price sensitive and add an extra 10% on? Like,
so when we work with the moving company, we just negotiated the lowest price we could negotiate.
Yeah.
And then definitely did not work out because, they ended up canceling a lot of our jobs because they get more expensive jobs and our customers were getting upset. So then we brought it in-house and we were just, we kept it at the same price initially.
Yeah.
And I definitely at that point was negative margins. Then we actually ran A/B testing in terms of pricing to understand price sensitivity. And that helped us determine what is the threshold for what people are willing to pay versus it's kind of like a formula. You can sell more products and lower delivery fees and maybe your fees will cover the difference.
Yeah.
Or you sell less products and higher delivery fees, right? And so we finally understand what is the right mix to make it work.
And do you think that sweet spot is the same across cities?
No, I don't think it would be the same. But we'll have to wait and see. Yeah.
TBD.
Yeah, TBD. But New York is, I think in New York, because people don't have cars, it's much harder, right? And so people are probably willing to pay, I would venture to guess, a bit more for delivery than in other cities. And maybe in other cities, people are willing to pick up things on their own more frequently, potentially.
Yeah, when I lived here, very few. I mean, like I could count on one hand my friends who had cars, let alone a truck.
And you know what you do? Any friend who has a car, you're always like, oh, this is the friend. When you're going to the Hamptons, take me with you. Or if you're going to IKEA, please let me know, right? So, those friends are always become very important. Yeah.
And as you guys have aged now, do you have you gone up market? Or who are your average customers at this point?
So the average customer, the seller and the buyer side are different. So we got kind of two different customer bases. So the seller is a little bit older. So let's say they're 30 to 55, and maybe they're stereotypically they're married. Maybe they're making room for a baby. They have higher disposable income. And for people listening who are kind of in the New York area, let's just say they're the Upper West Side couple, if you can imagine that. Okay. And then the buyer is Williamsburg, 25 to mid 30s.
First or second job.
Okay.
And so, they are aspirational. So they're, maybe they were buying IKEA, but AptDeco is an outlet for them to now kind of get West Elm or Restoration Hardware or Crate and Barrel and get these really design within reach, these really kind of nice brands from these higher end people and a higher end customer base. And so we kind of have these two kind of parties that we're kind of matching together, I think, quite nicely.
And then in terms of your question about upmarket, we're starting to see a shift where people are, there are more sellers who are becoming buyers, for example, which is for us is a great indicator that we're also changing the way people shop used, which is important for us. So, if you have a higher disposable income, you can afford to go just buy the Restoration Hardware piece again, but you're willing to come back to AptDeco and shop for the same Restoration Hardware piece at 50% off because you're, so for us, that's a very big indicator. We're definitely sort of widening the age gap, I think, for the buyer side. And the seller side is much easier because if any buyer who buys through us ends up selling through us anyway when the time is right. But seeing that shift for the seller side, for them to become buyers is really big for us.
Interesting. And what percentage of the sales are driven by big brands? How much of the stuff is design within reach, restoration hardware type stuff as a percentage on your site?
Yeah, so around 65-70% are the top 7 brands here in the US. So huge. IKEA, West Elm, CB2, Crate and Barrel, Room and Board.
In New York, ABC Carpet and Home, but it's only a brand
in New York City, ABC Carpet and Home. So
Restoration Hardware.
For us, that was a
design within reach.
That would that this whole kind of understanding of brands was a big aha moment for us.
Yeah.
From an acquisition perspective, from a site merchandising perspective, that these are the things that the levers that drive acquisition. And drive how we should be presenting and speaking to the site, because these are things that kind of speak to. It's the easiest way to derive quality is through brand.
Right. Well, and I would also imagine that's like a ton of organic search. Like people are looking for restoration hardware couch.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And like that's
Exactly.
yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Exactly.
And how else are you guys acquiring customers at this point?
So we acquire customers through Facebook, Instagram, Google. Our original channel, we kind of did this backwards. Our first channel that we were able to figure out was actually out-of-home subway advertising here in New York City. So, which is totally backwards. And so, definitely not the traditional, I think, advertising when we first started us. But I think, my experience at L'Oreal with kind of out of home or TV advertising, all those things, I think it kind of lend ourselves to kind of go there. And then we have to figure out the digital part after. So it actually kind of, I think, speaks to kind of, I think, quite frankly, our shortcomings from a acquisition perspective, the things that we had to kind of learn as we went along. But now we've had the time to kind of really figure these things out. But yeah, so now we have a really diverse group, but the majority of our customers now, they're through referral. Probably 45-50% of our customers are through word of mouth, friends and family type stuff. And so, which is, something we're very excited about and
That's
happy
amazing.
with.
Yeah. How do you track a Subway ad? Did you have a unique URL? Like, 'cause I can't imagine people remember that. To like type it in.
Coupons, the coupon
Coupons,
codes.
yeah.
We also ask people how they've heard about us, like at checkout or during listing.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, it wasn't the coupon because no one used it.
No, nobody used
Nobody
the coupon.
used it. It was
It's
just
the how you heard.
I mean, when we launched it in 2014, our traffic tripled.
Yeah,
after we
you get
did
to
it.
see it because it was like the only channel.
This
So
is
it
the only
was
channel.
seriously?
we
It was
had.
like this.
Very, and then we'd ask, when people were either listing a piece of furniture or buying a piece of furniture, like Reham mentioned, how do you hear about us? And I mean, it was extremely obvious. And it also, this is like a shout out for Subway advertising, but it also had a nice halo effect for our other channels as well. So that's like a validator.
Yeah.
It was like, this company, like people have always assumed that we're much larger than we actually are because of Subway advertising, no doubt.
Did you do that with the YC money? Like, how much did you have in the bank when you spent all that on Subway advertising?
It was a risk.
Not a lot.
It was a risk.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It was definitely less than 500K.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a big chunk.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
It was
'Cause
a huge
50K, 50K for just one month advertising.
1 month of how many cars?
There's 6,000 Subway cars in New York City, and we were in 1 in 6
1 in 6.
with one ad in those Subway ads. So now,
Oh, you can't even like A/B and the ad. You can't print a bunch of random ones.
No.
one, and at the time I was just very confident in it. I was very
I was
confident.
not.
I was like, I didn't know this was gonna work.
Ad. That's crazy.
We hired a guy that a creative exec at L'Oreal that I used to work with and had a great rapport with, and we hired him. And
We still work with him
still
on
work
like
with him.
consulting
Really?
basis.
yeah,
Yeah,
and we just kind of put our heads
Yeah.
together and no
Yeah.
A/B testing, did it.
We come up with
And,
the concept, and then he makes it look amazing. Yeah.
But it's funny, we were literally kind of bursting at the seams from the response because we didn't have the back end we didn't have the delivery operation to support kind of the growth that we had at that time. So,
But that's what I also wanted to ask you about, because that delivery operation seems daunting for a lot of people. So, like, did you hire someone with experience in that, or you just like wing it?
We definitely winged it.
Yeah.
So that was quite a lesson learned. And I think we probably could have benefited from hiring someone with experience earlier on, I would say.
yeah.
But we didn't know what we were doing. Frankly, we didn't know what we were doing. We were, it was like 2014, 15. We were bursting at the seams. We just needed to fulfill orders, and we were just renting vans. We were not thinking about our margins. We were not thinking about how much it was costing to do any of that. We ended up leasing long-term leases. I think 8 or 9 vans at the time. It was definitely premature because our business is cyclical or seasonal, excuse me. So we didn't really think about what happens during the low season, and then all these vans were just parked in the parking lot. But we've learned a ton since then. And we now have our head of operations who actually comes from furniture manufacturing supply chain. She's done a lot of this type of operations. So she's helped us a lot to get things in order.
At the same time, I think that, I mean, it's from a tech stack or from an intellectual property standpoint, what we've built on the operations side. So the way that our model works is so we don't warehouse anything. So we pick it up and deliver it in the same day. We're doing hundreds of pickups and deliveries across 3 states. And so, the scheduling of these 2 people across all these variables is very complex. And I think that that required some kind of, a little bit of outside of the box thinking in order to be able to do that. So, what we've built is really unique. And I imagine that building it from scratch and not having any preconceived notions in regards to how delivery and logistics works in some ways was helpful because it allowed us to kind of imagine something that I think is really different than what anybody's doing.
Yeah, that's true.
That's why our model is is one that's, as compared to other kind of furniture consignment models, is a lot more lightweight and a lot has the ability to kind of scale because we don't have these type of costs because we were able to imagine something really interesting from a delivery standpoint.
Yeah. So there's no like kind of open source routing software that you're using. You just kind of rolled your own.
We looked for it.
We definitely looked. But no, we ended up building everything ourselves. So.
Okay. And so are you a CS engineer?
Electrical
engineer. So how are you vetting these engineers in the early days?
I mean, in the early days, our team was still very small.
Yeah.
So, but I mean, I did a lot of software development at Goldman. So when I was at Goldman in the beginning, that's what I was doing. Then I moved to product management and I ran a team of engineers. So, so I knew how to do that part.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was possible.
Yeah.
Okay. And then what about the choice to actually not warehouse? Was that obvious from the beginning?
That was always the plan from the
We
beginning.
never considered warehousing.
Never considered it.
Warehousing was not the obvious solution for us because we always thought that
you're going to be capped by the space of it.
Exactly.
It's
kind of like if you use the Airbnb example, like building hotels versus making everybody's apartment a hotel.
Yeah.
And so, we always, not that we knew that, like we didn't think about it like that time, but our model essentially is you can make every person's home a warehouse. Pretty much. And so, but from the beginning, we were essentially trying to solve the Craigslist issue, which is you go to somebody's house and you pick it up from them and you pay them in cash. And then so why don't you just do that by paying them online and then somebody else picks it up for you?
Yeah.
And so the warehousing part.
It was never a point of consideration.
It was not a point, yeah.
Yeah,
and now it's not. And it still isn't.
But now for other reasons, we realize it's cost prohibitive. You can't, in our opinion, build a business model, a sustainable business model by warehousing everything because you're always going to be capped by the space, the cost to cover it. Someone is going to have to pay for it, and ultimately, to either be the buyer or the seller on the platform who is already relatively price sensitive. There's a million reasons why, in our opinion, it doesn't work. And there's been a lot of startups that have come and gone that have tried to do it that way and were unsuccessful.
Were there other ideas that you thought might work and then just absolutely failed that you've tried out?
For AptDeco itself?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Well, like features.
Oh, yes. Plenty. What did we try?
Man, there's so many. Let me just think about it.
I'm blanking right now.
The road of any startup is lined with a gazillion failures.
So we actually did, simple things that intuitively should work. Offering photographing for customers.
Yeah.
Nobody wants to do that.
So funny. So yeah, if you took the Airbnb advice and you're like, this was a huge growth thing for Airbnb.
Yes.
Like, this is obviously going to work for us.
Nope.
Doesn't work.
Did not work. Offering cleaning services and all that type of stuff. Nope. Did not work.
People don't care.
People don't care.
Or they don't want to pay for it.
I mean,
Yes.
yeah, but if they don't want to pay for it, it's also severely discounted. So if you go to the same company to do the cleaning, they'll charge you double. We negotiated very good, good deals, and people were not buying them. So we couldn't even keep the deals because we, promised a certain number of cleaning jobs. So, stuff like that. There's a ton of this stuff that you think should work did not. People were not budging.
Yeah.
Okay.
The other interesting thing too is that there are things that you think they would work and they don't work, and then you do them again and then they do work.
That's true.
So, for example, we were mentioning the acquisition channels, and now we're doing Facebook and Instagram advertising. Today, it is one of our biggest advertising channels, and we hired a agency to manage our campaigns before, and they were not successful when we had hired this agency to do it. Well, they were not successful when we had the agency do it. And so then a year later, so we weren't doing any advertising on it at all. A year later, we dusted off and we're like, let's just look through this and see if there's something to be learned from what happened when we tried to do use these acquisition channels. And then we saw one campaign that, that campaign did really well. It's 15 campaigns there. See one that did really well. And we're like, let's just turn back on that campaign. Let's just see what happens. And then we turned it back on. It's continued to do well. And then we're like, well, why did this? And then that just kind of spurred us really understanding our digital advertising channels. That was really the birth of it.
Yeah.
And toward now, it's our most profitable, best channel. And it's something that it took us, quite frankly, 3-4 years to kind of really figure out how to do it. And so sometimes I'm kicking myself, how I wish I know what I know now, and but it takes. I think a difficult thing with startups is, it takes some time to figure things out. Some things you have to figure out quicker or faster. Some things, you really gotta, have some patience. And one of our mottos now is, particularly from a marketing perspective, is I just rather do a few things really, really exhaustively well than just try to do a whole bunch of things to where I can't really understand the nuance and the detail of it to understand if it works or not. And I think that's kind of a big shift that's really paid off.
But it's also so hard with algorithms anyway to figure out what you're doing well.
Yeah.
But do you know what was it about that particular campaign? Was it the audience? Was it the content?
It was the content. It was an ad that was testimonial, and when I look back actually on those campaigns, I'm a little embarrassed by them, to be honest with you. But this one was kind of testimonial, so it had quotes from customers, if I'm remembering correctly, and that did really well. And the other ones were really off base when I think about them now in terms of their performance and the things we were throwing. But you have to throw things out there to have them stick. But then we start doing things that focus on brands and doing things like that. We start really looking at our kind of internal numbers, internal search terms. And once you start becoming really understanding your digital channels, understanding your search volume, your landing pages, your click-through rates, and if you understand those things, let's say whether it's for your website, you can just kind of flip it on its head through your advertising and acquisition channels. But it took us some time to really kind of understand that type of detail.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So what kind of analytics are you running on your site now?
In terms of
tracking, figuring it all out, the flow.
Yeah. So we track everything from clicks to even usability. We record videos, in the background. We track all our data, customer data, all of that. And we have visualization tools that we use to visualize it and be able to manipulate it.
Okay.
And it's been incredible. Since we've invested in one platform specifically, and that has completely transformed the way we do things. Because before we were running SQL queries, right? And so that takes time. So not everybody, actually at some point, everybody in our team knew how to do SQL. But it takes time because you pull it and then you have to manipulate it, you have to analyze it, and then being able to just use a tool is a bit expensive. It made a big difference. Yeah.
Is there a reason why you're not mentioning it?
No, I don't know. I don't want to advertise it, I guess.
Why not?
No free shout-outs?
Yeah.
Why not? Just tell us. Just say it. We use this tool. It's called Looker.
Okay. Yeah.
And that's super helpful.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it was great. It was a big change. And I mean, I think that kind of opened us up to more analytics in other ways. And,
Yeah.
and it made us become a much more analytical company. Kind of brought us home to our experience, our professional experience before starting at AptDeco, to be quite honest with you.
Yeah.
At least for me.
I mean, I think we were just like able to dig into a lot of detail that it was hard to catch if you're just manipulating Excel documents before. So, getting to like the nuance of brands by category and the time it takes to sell and who are these people, who are the people who are dropping off and why and what did they have in their cart and you visualize it all together. So like you have these crazy dashboards that can be super detailed. Then you can actually look at this data and able to make some sort of look at trends and make some conclusions and actually able to use it for marketing purposes or for updating the product or operations. Even the operations, we've become a lot smarter even from our unit economics perspective because we're able to like look at all the nuance that goes into making a transaction, right? So, okay, this is the revenue, but here's all the costs associated with it. And like you can see that all together, it makes a big difference.
Yeah.
Especially for product people. Now, did you guys do the New York City back and forth during YC?
Yes.
You did? Was
Every
it worth it? Okay.
Well, yes, it definitely was worth it. So we didn't know that this is what we were supposed to do. So we had like rented out our apartments here and subletted our apartments, and we went to Mountain View, and I can't remember, it was like PG or...
It was PG.
It was PG. He's like, first day, he's like, what are you guys doing here? You need to be in New York. and so we're like, okay. And so we started flying back and forth every week for the 3 months. Yeah, it was pretty...
We would fly in Tuesday morning and then out Wednesday. Out Wednesday.
Dude.
Every week.
Yeah.
And after demo day, we
we
crashed for like 2-3 days. Like we were after demo day, we were finished.
But it was definitely very valuable because during YC they kept on talking about talk to your customers, to your customers, and we're like, what does that mean? Like, what does it mean to talk to our customers?
Literally.
We do customer service.
Yeah.
We're like, no, it's not customer service. You need to somehow figure out a way to get in front of your customers.
Yeah.
And
I mean, it was exhausting, but it's the best advice we could have ever gotten.
What else was helpful? Yeah, just kind of like wrapping up. I'm curious. We're about to start another batch. If you could give some advice to the people about to go into the batch, what would you tell them?
I would say all the suggestions and all the ideas, no matter how crazy or off-based or non-scalable or hard that they may seem, you just do it at 100% and do it in an exhaustive way. That's what I would say. And I think the one thing, that was, the key for us really getting a lot out of YC is that every week our partners were Paul Bukai, Kevin Hale. Those were our main partners at the time. And, they would have, so you would sit in the group office hours with all the other companies. You will see that you'll learn that you guys are all in the same boat, all have the same problems and to some level or extent. And, and then they would give you this feedback or ideas. And then by that following week, we were very diligent about having some legitimate responses to everything that they had said we should do. And we just really took that to heart. So we just just ate it all up. We really dove in 100% and we were not above anything. And I think that was really to our benefit. What would you say?
Yeah, I think we took our learnings from corporate in that way. And so, we had our one-on-ones with the partners and we created structure. So made sure we set up the meetings every week because it's up to you. You don't have to set up meetings with them every week. So we made sure we had reoccurring meetings for the duration of the program. And we had goals or, here's our agenda. Here's what we have questions with. And here's what we're looking to get done.
Yeah.
And they would have suggestions. And then the next week we'd be like, well, here's the list of things we got done. And we held ourselves accountable and made those meetings become to some extent the reason we're to hold us accountable for them.
Managed up.
Managed up to some extent. And, you know, and like the advice I would give sometimes is very specific. Like you should try, you know, I think there was one like you need to have a blog for SEO. But sometimes it's just like you need to talk to your customers. And it's like, well, okay, what does that mean? And trying to like figure that and distill it is also a big part of that as well.
Awesome. Well, if people want to try out AptDeco, what should they do?
Go to aptdeco.com, AptDeco.com.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.